everyone, Melissa here, and I'm going to talk to you today about the colors that I'm using for my Copic markers in the image that I'm doing today called Beauty from Whimsy Stamps. I've had a lot of requests for this actually. So here I've got my image and I'm starting with a YR quadruple 0, and you can see I'm just shading in some of the skin areas. I like to sketch in where I'm going to want the darkest colors when I first start. So I'm doing that with my YR quadruple 0. And then I'm going to go right to my E11, which is a little bit dark, but you can see me flicking in the color here. And there are some portions where my hands get in the way, and I'm really sorry. I didn't realize it when I was recording the video. But here I'm putting in the E11. And again, I'm just flicking that color in where I want the most shadow portions of her skin to show. I'm also sketching in some features, her nose, her eyelids a little bit. And now I'm going to go in with an E04, and this seems really dark when you first put it in, but it does give some nice contrast to the skin. Again, I'm just flicking in that color where I want some nice shadow. Next, I'm going to grab my E08, and the E08 is a really nice dark shadow color that has a little bit of red in it, and the red is fantastic when you are coloring. So after I put that in, I go in with a YR00 and I kind of flick that dark color out, and you can see I'm even shading the far side of her face with that YR00. Next I go in with a YR000 and I'm going over the whole area, fading those colors in. And I leave her nose bridge white and then go over that with a YR quadruple 0. So after I flick in that YR000 into a number of areas, I go back in with the YR000. And now I'm going back in with my E11 and really blending those dark colors into the lightest portions of her skin, so that transition between the dark colors and the light colors is a little bit more even. And you'll see me going over a lot of these areas with some more colors, and those are all YR000 or quadruple 0, and that just basically really evens out the skin tone. And the last thing I do is color her lips with an E11 and then an E04. Now I'm going to go in and color her tail, and I'm using a YG21 to start with. I would also suggest maybe a Y00 if you really want some really fantastic high contrast shading. So I start with that YG21, and now I'm going in with a YG25 again to the darkest shading spots on her tail. And now I'm using a YG67 to add the darkest color. YG23, I go over and flick into those dark colors, and then back to my YG21 to add more color. But you can see I'm leaving a lot of white space. That white space there is so that I have a nice highlight on the top. I decided to go back in with my YG67 and then again with my YG25 and YG23 and add some more contrast there. And then finally you can see I'm using a circular motion to go in with my YG21. I go back in with my YG67 to add some features, and then you'll see me add some texture here. Actually, I'm doing the tail first, and the tail I didn't spend a lot of time. I'm just coloring the areas that I want the darkest with YG21, YG25, YG67, YG23. And usually I work from lightest to darkest. It blends the best for me, and it's also the way that Copic marker will tell you to color. Sometimes I'll skip ahead and then come back to a light color, but I always lay down a nice light color first, and in this case it's my YG21. So now you see me going with my YG67, YG25, and YG23 again, and add some nice little dots just to give her tail a little bit of texture. Now the last thing that you're going to see me do is go in with a YG21 and kind of smush over. This is what I'm doing now, smushing over some of the dots that I already made. And that leaves just a nice blended texture on her tail. I'm going to color her shirt, and to be honest with you, when I finished this image, I wasn't as happy with the color that I chose. I'm using an E30, E31, E34, and an E37. And again, I'm just working lightest to darkest. I start with that E30, go in with the E33 or E34 and flick that color in, and then E37 is here in my darkest portions. And then I cover it all with an E30 to really get it nice and blended. Again, the shirt kind of turned out a little bit too much of a skin color, and I wasn't really looking for that, but in the end it looks okay. The next part is her hair, and I had a lot of fun coloring her hair. I started with an E09, and I go to those darkest places, and my camera cut out, so I had to start over when I realized it, but you haven't missed much. I go in with my E09, and I'm trying to pick out the portions of her hair where that would be the darkest. Think about the part in your scalp, or when your hair flows out, those portions that kind of pop out from the head, those are going to be areas of highlight. And at the junction, like at the beginning and end of those kind of humps, is going to be the darkest portions of the hair. So you can see wherever there is a hump in her hair, I'm leaving that white because that's where I want the highlight. And wherever there's kind of a pinch in her hair, I'm putting that darker color, that E09 in there. If you don't have an E09, you can use an E08 or an E07 for this too. Now the next thing I'm doing is going in with an E17, I believe, and flicking in a little bit darker color here into those creases that I had just mentioned. And then I'm going to take an E29, which is really dark, and flick that in because that really gives you some nice contrast in those dark portions of her hair. And you can see I'm leaving a lot of highlight, a lot of white area, and you'll see what I do here. I'm not going to leave that whole section that white, but if I add color to that now, I'll lose it later. I'll lose that highlight, so I like to leave a nice white space, and I do this in all my coloring. Wherever I want a nice highlight, it's usually colored last. So now I'm going to go in with an E02, and I'm just going to color in those highlights, kind of blend those areas out. I do this quickly because I'm not so concerned with how this looks. I'm just adding in that color. Now, this is really important. I'm going in with that E17 that I started with, and I'm putting in some nice thin wisps into her hair. Now, the way to do this is to hold your marker more upright. And you'll really see me do that when I go in and add my E29. And I flick over those nice highlighted areas to make it look more like, you know, really nice textured hair. So now I'm going with my E29, and I'm holding my marker more upright, and it's harder to see in the video, to get some nice thin wisps that I'm flicking into her hair. And adding that last E29 and adding that last little bit of color really makes her hair look beautiful. So now I'm going to go in with my E02 again and just kind of blend all those highlighted areas out, and it kind of just smushes the color together, makes it look really nice. Now I'm just coloring up the shell a little bit, using a little bit of E08 and some of my E30 colors. Now I'm going to do a little bit of background to her, and I'm using a BG quadruple 0 to start with. I'm just kind of mushing that color in there. I like to work quickly when I do backgrounds because I don't want to see any big areas of like marker streaks. And now I'm going to go in with my E30 series again that I mentioned earlier and just streak in some sand below her. I start with the lightest color, and then so E30, now I'm using an E34. I go and grab an E33 and kind of mush that color in, and then go back to my E30 and really blend it in nicely together. My lightest color, because that kind of blends everything in. Now I'm going to go in with the E34 and put in some nice dots in the sand. My E33, some nice dots. And then go back over that with my E30 and really mush that color in and blend it out. The mush does a lot, actually. And now I'm going in with a BG triple 0 and kind of adding some more color and blending out. And that's where my video ends. And you can see the finished product here. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And please, if you have questions, ask. I'm going to try hard to add the markers that I use for you. But I do have to say that takes a little bit longer for me than doing just quick speed videos, but every now and then I'll try and throw in a few where you can actually see how I go about the process. If you're interested in Copic classes, a friend and I teach classes at creatingfromcolor.com, and we'd be happy to have you there. Thanks, and have a great day.